Hello. Hey, you can hear me. How are you doing? I know you do better than that. How are you doing? Awesome. All right. Well, can you say konbanwa?
Konbanwa.
Konbanwa. That means good evening in Japanese. So, in 2014, I had the incredible opportunity to go to Japan for 6 weeks with Evangel University. And guess what? You helped me get there. And so we did all this fundraising. We raised all the funds, and we prayed, and we worked, and the day before I leave, I break my foot. Yeah, I thought it was a really bad sprain, and so I went on a plane, and I fell down the escalator entering into Japan. You can laugh, it's okay. My team did. It was fun. And so the first Sunday I get back, or the first Sunday I'm there, my team goes an hour away to preach at some churches, and I'm at Central Bible College and at Central Bible Church in Tokyo, Japan. And this Filipino missionary says to me as I'm telling him my story of how I got to Japan in the first place just for the 6 weeks. He says, "My brother, I believe God's calling you here." I'm like, okay, it's just some missionary trying to recruit. Like, I'm not called to Japan for any more than this 6 weeks. But God kept speaking through that. God kept speaking through missionaries. God kept speaking through people throughout the journey while I was there. And then first week I get back and I start my job at Oak Grove Assembly in Springfield, Missouri. And I think it's the second Sunday night there. We're at the altar praying. This altar right here, just the same type of thing. We're sitting there praying and worshiping and not even thinking about Japan or anything else. And I hear what that Filipino missionary told me that first Sunday I was there. "My brother, I believe God's called you here." I'm like, what? But it was clear. God spoke to me through that. So the next day, I'm in staff meeting with 10 other staff members, and we're talking about things, and our lead pastor says, "Hey, I think that people, were hearing from God last night. It was the presence of God was so strong, the anointing was in the place, and we heard a lot of people were hearing from God. I believe one of you heard from God." And I'm like, okay. Second week here, I'm going to Japan. Sorry, I just got hired. You don't normally do that, Just imagine you get in your job and it's like you get hired, and it's like, "Hey, by the way, I'm leaving." It's just not good. But they all knew. And it's really funny. They said to me, after I said, "Hey, God was speaking to me last night. I'm going to Japan. I don't know when. I don't know how long." This was 2 years ago. And they said, "Oh, we weren't going to say anything. We didn't want to push anything on you. But all you've been doing since you've been here is talking about Japan." Okay. Thank you, God. Arigato gozaimasu. Everyone say arigato gozaimasu. Arigato, or you could, the famous song, "Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto." And then one more, and then I'll move on. "Do itashimashite." Don't touch my mustache. "Do itashimashite." There you go. You said you're welcome. Thank you. Arigato gozaimasu. All right. So, with that, I learned about a lot of things while I was there. It's really an amazing culture. What do you think about when you go to Japan? When you think about Japan, when you hear about it? Let's shout it out. Food? Drifting. Hockey? Anyone ever had hockey? Pokemon? Naruto? All right, well, that's for the youth. Okay. Kimonos. See, right there? See, I'm wearing this summer gear. And what you don't see is the broken foot, the cast, and the Captain America shirt, and the blue, red, white, and blue shorts. So I really found out how American I actually was. The other thing I found out was that less than 1% of these 147 million people, less than 1% of these people know Jesus, which is crazy. And then the other thing is that Japan is about the size of California. So 147 million people in a place the size of California. Can anyone say elbow room? We need some more elbow room. So that first week I'm there, I'm in Tokyo with a broken foot and looking very American, attracting a lot of attention because You know, you don't often see this walking around the streets of Tokyo, but it was a pretty funny sight. A lot of people laughed. I did too. So, first weekend I was there, there's what's called train pushers. Anyone ever heard of train pushers? Okay. Train pushers are where Tokyo at 7 a.m. Everyone's trying to get into rush hour, and they're trying to get in the train and trying to get in on time, and they just keep pushing. It's so full. So you can roll that video. Just play it. Play it for me. Play it, Sam. Okay. And so, like, it's busy, and they keep going, and I'll just keep pushing them in there. Just keep going. Keep pushing them in there. All right. All right. Now, so imagine this. With crutches. Yeah. A little crazy. A little crazy. So, incredible experience. Lots of interesting stuff happened. And God spoke through so many people. The other thing that happened was I got, after hearing this and knowing I should be going to Japan, okay, where do I go from there? And I started praying about it, looking at it, and I looked at Chi Alpha, which I worked with in 2014, and I talked with the Chi Alpha director out there, and I just started pursuing it. It's like, okay, God spoke, so when God says to do something, what should you do? Do it! Do it! When God says to do something, simple, do it! So, I started praying, and then I started taking steps to it, putting action to my faith. And so, I do the application, and my roommate is getting married, and I'm trying to find a place to stay because I'm just trying to find a place to stay. And the Carters, who I've worked with in Japan, say, hey, I know this is crazy. First of all, we saw that you were coming back to Japan. We want you to pray about it, but we want you to come back and work with us. So the same missionaries I worked with in 2014 are asking me to come back and work with the youth. And what's crazy about that is there are about 6 to 8 students coming every week in this church, which sounds really little, but the thing is, in Japan, you don't have students coming to church because everyone is so busy with school. Like, it's 14-hour days in school. It's crazy. But right now, with no youth pastor, they're having 6 to 8 students just coming to service with their 12-year-old, which is incredible. And then the other thing is, you don't have more than 15 people in a church at a time. They have 60 to 80 people every single week, and they are about to have to break down Sunday school walls just to fit more people in. So God is working, and the other thing is, like, generally, you don't have people getting saved. You don't have many people who come to know Christ very often in Japan. There are missionaries that have been there for 10 years and have only seen one person come to know Christ. This year alone, they've had 3. And, well, last Sunday they had another baptism, so there's been 7 baptisms this year alone. And it just keeps growing. So, I don't know, God's just working. And God's moving. And when God speaks, you listen. When God says to do something, you do it. And then, through all that, I learned of some other things. I'll be living in the city of Tsukuba, which is the MIT of Asia. So 3/4 of the population have PhDs. Woo! Smart people. 3/4 of the population have PhDs. And the simple fact is, it's really hard to connect with people. Everyone's really nice. Everyone is, it's the most nice culture, nice people that you'll ever meet, but actually getting deep with them, actually getting to know them, is really difficult. If you're not part of their community, if you're not part of their work, or part of the college, or some part of their community, you're not going to get to know them. So, using that same concept, if God says to do something, you do it. If God says something, you listen to it. Dr. Carter, when he came back, the missionary I'm working with, he said, hey, this feels like a God thing. He got a telescope for his 12-year-old, and they brought it to Chi Alpha's group, game night. And they were enthralled with it. They loved it. And he's like, okay. And his daughter was learning, he was doing astronomy. And so they get a little bit bigger one. They loved it. So when he gets back, he has this idea. I wonder what would happen if we got a humongous telescope and brought it to the MIT of Asia in Japan at Tsukuba University. What would happen? We'd be connecting the science community with the church community and just hanging out with them. And guess what? If we are in a relationship with God, and we are truly living out our walk with Christ, they will come to know, they might just feel the love of God. They might just come to know the God that we serve and the God that we know, because if you know someone and you're really good friends with them, guess what's going to happen? If I really know you, Pastor Matt, and I'm good friends with you, then all my other good friends, guess what? They're probably going to get to know you at some point. It's the same way with this whole concept of just really evangelism and just in general, but in this concept, we're connecting the science community. So, this brings me to this video that we're about to show, which is pretty much BGMC bought us a $13,000 telescope. I'll tell you a little bit more about that.
I'm a missionary to Japan, and I want to tell you about this giant telescope. I serve in a town called Tsukuba. Tsukuba is Japan's science city, and my family and I do Chi Alpha College ministry at the University of Tsukuba. The University of Tsukuba is Japan's science university. It's called the MIT of Asia, and one of the things that we do at the university is we reach college students through Chi Alpha ministry. Now, a few years ago, my daughter got interested in astronomy, so we bought her a little telescope. Well, we liked the little telescope so much that we thought, hey, let's get a little bit bigger one. So we got a little bit bigger one, and we started doing these parties with students where they would come over to our house and we would play games, and inevitably we started looking through the telescope. And I was amazed when I saw my scientist students from Tsukuba University look in the telescope and scream when they saw the rings of Saturn, saying, "Oh, I can't believe that it's so cool." And I started to think, hey, what would happen if these scientists in Tsukuba found out that we had here at our church like the biggest telescope around? We could probably get a lot of students to come to our events. People in Tsukuba are interested in science. They're interested in astronomy. And one of the most difficult things in Japan to do is to connect with people. You have to have an excuse to connect with someone because people in Japan are crazy busy. And so I thought, hey, what if we had a big telescope? That would be an excuse for scientists to come to our church. It would be a way of connecting with children in our neighborhood. It would be an opportunity to start a conversation with people about the God who made the universe. And so I started to kind of dream about that, but I thought, I'll never be able to afford a telescope bigger than the one we have. But then I thought, hey, BGMC buys things for missionaries. They probably would never buy me a gigantic telescope to do ministry to scientists in Japan, but hey, I'll ask. All they can do is say no. Well, the short version of the story is they said yes. And just the other day, I received this telescope, which is gigantic. It's so big that when we set it up on the sidewalk at Tsukuba University, I know that tons of students are going to stop and say, could I look through that? And it will be an excuse to start a conversation. One of the most difficult things to do in Japan. So thank you, BGMC, for buying us this telescope. We are excited to see what kind of fruit it produces in Japan at Tsukuba University in Japan's science city. So, God's work. Give a hand clap for that. That is just awesome. God made that happen. It's really hard to get that kind of money to do that type of thing. But God made it work. And within 2 weeks of him having that idea, it was approved. And within 3 weeks, it was at our house. And so with that video, we get the telescope that week, and it's about to be National BGMC Sunday a year ago, actually. And we're
we're just going to take some photos. And Dr. Carter says, hey, you have your video equipment. Let's go film. And so he puts on a shirt, puts together a real quick script, and does that video right there. I edited it the next day. We showed it at National BGMC Sunday at Oak Grove Assembly. And then from there, our National BGMC directors, David and Mary Boyd, they go to Oak Grove, and they saw it, and they're like, hey, we love that. We love what God's doing with that. So they shared it on everywhere, seriously everywhere. And then we started being contacted by people. One of our missionaries from the national office actually talked to us and said, hey, I've been feeling a calling to go back to Japan for a while. I feel God's calling me to your church. So now we have a children's pastor who's raising the budget to come this next year. We have, you can clap that. The other thing we have a guy from the Canadian Pentecostal group in Canada. He's coming to serve the next 4 months. And then we have another kid from Louisiana. We have teams of people coming all next year that are coming all summer because they saw that video, because of just listening to and hearing what God said and doing what God said, even though it sounded a little crazy. Hey, what about this? Why don't we get a humongous telescope? But God did it. God made it happen. We spend so much money on so many things that don't really matter. So it was incredible to see us spending something that, it might sound like a crazy idea, but God's used a lot of crazy ideas to reach the one or maybe many. So, yeah, you can clap. You can clap. Because we're praising God for what He's done. We're praising God tonight for what He's done. And it's BGMC Sunday, isn't it? Kinda. Okay, well. What I encourage you to do is BGMC does buy stuff for missionaries, just like he said. And so give to BGMC because it gives opportunities and tools for missionaries to be able to reach people, and more people can come to know Christ because you can get a little bit of change every week. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
So, last thing, and then I will let you go to Pastor Mac. The serious fact is the number one thing I need more than anything is prayer. Because I know that this will not happen without God orchestrating it. God's already done incredible things this last year. God's already brought so many people to Japan because of just simple things. And God's already working in Japan. There was a baptism this Sunday. And so I need prayer because I'm heading out this Thursday to Japan. And I'm so excited. But I know that I need people praying for me, and I know God will make it happen. The other thing is the Carters need prayer. When they said, yes, I'm going to Japan, they were missionaries in the Philippines. And it was kind of a crazy idea for them to go to Japan, and they ran into a lot of roadblocks. But Dr. Carter knew that God said to go to Japan. And so as soon as they said, hey, let's go to Japan, Lindsay, his wife, there's a picture of them if you want to throw that up. But Lindsay, his wife, had a heart condition suddenly. She had a palpitation. And so she started passing out. They kept bringing her to the ER. She just kept having health problems. Like she thought she was going to pass any day. And that was four and a half years ago. And God brought them through. It's still a struggle. So they need your prayers because that's crazy. That's really difficult to go and hear God to say something, and then you do it, and then all this stuff happens, and you know what it is. You know the enemy's attacking. You know all this stuff is happening, but it's still a journey. It's still a struggle. So they'd appreciate your prayers. And then lastly, and seriously, there's financial difficulties both with them and with me. So I ask for your prayers and support. Thank you so much for listening to me, and you are welcome to check out more at thecartersinjapan.com or my Facebook page, Canavan in Japan. Thank you.
You bet.